Ken
What's up,
Barefield is
Ken?
the stunt coordinator, and Don L is the fight coordinator for Cobra Kai. I'm Matt Noble of Gold Derby. I want to kick things off by asking each of you, what's the most important thing when coordinating a stunt fight scene in the show? And we'll start with you, Ken.
And you're asking like what it takes,
Yeah, what do you
or
need
what's
to
the
focus on? What for you is the thing that you go, oh, got to make sure we get this right?
well, I would just go with, the best thing is what you got to get right is you got to get your team. You got to get the right team in order. And so, I didn't know Don when I first brought him in for season 4 and 5 and everything, and now we're like, brothers. You know what I mean? So it's like you got to get a good team of guys around that, A, want to work, B, want to be there, and C, want to look out for one another. Because sometimes in this industry we have a tendency of just looking at like what I can do and not really looking at my guy left and right. So what me and Don wanted to do with our team is bring in a good team to make a good base, a solid team together, so that when me and Don, when Don's got to be on set and I got to be upstairs in another meeting for the next episode, we know that everybody that we brought in is like up to the task. And Don, you can elaborate more.
Yeah, Don?
Yeah, I think it's to honor the story and to honor the characters and honor what we would kind of collaborative, like to take the experience that we've had in our backgrounds and to apply those things to help push things forward and to make sense of the story versus like, the one thing we don't want to be seeing is all of a sudden you're seeing Daniel LaRusso in all of a sudden doing, B twists and 720s. It's just, as an audience, it doesn't seem like it to us wouldn't fit. So you want to kind of find them at the right age group, find them what they're at, have an evolution to their fighting styles, and constantly throughout the years, when I was with Ken, we looked at him as like, hey, you guys that are in season 4, you guys should be like, a higher degree of black belts and just in progression of their characters and giving them things and constantly evolving the seasons as if you would as a art student.
Yeah, like Ken, how important is that with like character? Like, because like you could have a stunt thing with, oh, they've got to fall off a building, they've got to do this stunt thing or whatever. But how much you need to take into account like how that character would fall, how that character would jump through a window, how that like when working with your stunt people.
Correct. Yes, that's a great question, actually. Yeah, it's like kind of going off what Don was saying. You don't want to throw a punch just to throw a punch. Same way with like your character development and your like driven fighting styles of each character. You don't want to throw something just out of the blue that Samantha wouldn't throw unless it's either a call back or something that's we're going to build off of later in the future scripts. So like if Dimitri falls versus Hawk falls, well, Hawk's going to fall in a lot more athletic position than Dimitri is, and that plays off the story and kind of the hierarchy of fighters. Not that we look at it that way, but Hawk is a insane athlete, whereas Dimitri is also a great athlete, but in different terms. So you look at those two, and that's just more of making sure that you honor what the characters that we're trying to portray, what their fighting styles are, and make sure that they're all cohesive.
Yeah. And with that, how important is collaboration with the actors on the show, with the writers, directors, whoever, like actually like communication with them about what they're hoping for those characters and where those characters are.
It's all collaboration. I mean, like when me and Don get the script and we look at it from, me and Don's perspective, and then we go to the big three and we go to the director of the episode, and then we, well, Ralph can't really do this right now because he's already on his 6th fight of the season and his left shoulder's a little tweaked. So we're gonna go to the right side more instead of the left. So there's a lot of dance that we have to do behind the scenes that people don't get to see. That's why me and Don talk like so highly of the actors, of like their work ethic and all the time that they put into, because they just see what the final product is, which is great, which is our job to do. But me and Don make sure that everything that we're showing the final product has really been tested and really been like analyzed from not only like the viewers of just Cobra Kai, but also the Karate Kid world that we come from. And Don, you can kind of piggyback off any of that.
Yeah, we just want to make sure we take enough time to go ahead and work on, the whole cast skill set. So even if they may not have a fight that week, we encourage them to be in there to start training so we can kind of, assess and get better with the tool set that they have to kind of show the evolution. So if they're doing like basically like a 360 jump kick and say Hawk is really good at it, can we push it to the next episode where he's gotten better to where he does a 540? Now can we push it to where he does a 720? So then, as an audience member, the power consistencies that we put in isn't all of a sudden, oh man, he just in a 720. We saw no progression. So we want to make sure there's an evolution to their art as well as in their character.
Mm. Now, the show is based on, like, well, not based off, but continues on the story from the Cobra Kai films from the 80s. And the show in its series has a very distinct 80s style to a lot of like areas from music to the way it sort of like it still continues on that world and that story that was established in the 80s. And that includes the fight sequences and the stunts and things. So how much do you have to sort of approach it with a sort of 80s retro sensibility, guys?
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Don, but we don't necessarily look at it so much for that perspective of like,
Okay.
well, we're keeping the 80s feel to it. I think that's more how we edit it and like the sound producers and those guys, the sound designers, and then John, Josh, and Hayden itself, like they have a really good vision. And I think they have a really good they do a really good job of what me and Don create, and then they putting that nostalgic feel to it. There are times where we will do it because it's a callback from the 80s, right? From one of the Karate Kid films. But as far as making it feel 80s, unless it's like, again, script specific, like if it's, a training sequence from, Johnny, well, then we're going to make sure that it's really hyped up 80s, or, headband around, the gray sweatsuit, the Walkman, all the 9 yards.
Yeah. Don, do you agree?
My thing would be is that, Robert Mark Kamen, the screenwriter of Karate Kid, studied Goju-Ryu. He's a traditional martial artist. I studied Okinawan Shorin, which is more of the in the Miyagi world, and we're basically, in a sense, our systems are cousins of martial arts. So you want to be in doing that. So in doing the martial arts, you want to keep that. What was traditional about Miyagi-Do was that he was highlighting what traditional karate is. So it wasn't the Hollywood food that we would know. You would see actually what traditional martial arts would do. And a lot of people who study martial arts, like myself, would be, oh, wow, that's really actually that's authentic. And it's what we study. It's not something that Robert made up. It's not something I made up. It's what, has been before us. And that's the cool thing about, the show and doing the martial arts is the tradition and the origin of it. So a lot of things might seem 80s. And so in that regards, but actually it's really just, it's based on true, it's based on true, like traditional martial arts. And that's why the show carries the way that it does.
Oh,
So that's how we ended up bringing that in back to here, is to carry the roots.
Oh, that's awesome. So in the show, there are big scenes where like everyone's all in. You got dojos and dojos worth of people doing battle. And there's other scenes where it's a bit more one character training, or two characters fighting each other, or getting in a tiff together. What do you think? What is trickier for you of those two? One where you've got like heaps of characters, or just one or two?
I would say the scale days, the one where we have all actors in the dojo fighting. We have 25 stunt dudes there as well, stunt women and men who are we're focused on Kenny versus Tanner right here, but then in the background you have 4 or 5 more fights going on, so you're watching the main fight while you're also looking over here and looking over there and make sure that karate and those hits are hitting and everything. Because I love our fan base to where they'll not criticize, but they will definitely pick apart each scene. And so we kind of recognize that, and it's kind of a good challenge for us, because like on our show we don't have playback, so when we shoot something we just have to kind of like make sure we're watching it in the moment and then move on from it. So like it's kind of a fun game that we get to play of watching the monitors. Like camera A, camera B, camera C being like, and it's going to hit here, and we set it for there, and then you're just kind of like following, where's Waldo, and making sure it always does look good, but there's always the background fights and the foreground fights in between the fights that's where it gets chaotic. When it's just one-on-one, those are also challenging, but not nearly as challenging as having, all your cast out there duking it out at once.
Don, we're just talking about the big fight scenes, and the season 5 finale has a big scene where you got 3 dojos worth of people going at it. How was it like coordinating the fight in that big scene?
Oh man, it was wild. I mean, Ken, I forget how much time do we have to get that done?
A day and a half, 2 days.
Wow.
If that.
To shoot it, or to choreograph it and shoot it?
Oh, well, to choreograph and shoot it, we had about 4 days all said and done. Me and Don didn't see each other for 72 hours.
Whoa.
It was,
yeah.
He was with one set.
That's right. Because originally, Ken, we had those fights there. So the fights were going to be bigger. And then with the time crunch that we hit, we decided to go ahead and do the oneer, which then we rehearsed at like maybe 30 minutes prior to what that would have been. And having the rapport that Ken and I do with our camera team, our director, Joel, he basically said, hey, give us an idea of what this is. What would this oneer look like? And we just banged it out within like setting that up in 15, 30 minutes, Ken?
If that.
Yeah. So that's one of the changes that we go through on the show, is that sometimes, given the time, there's always a great game plan. But Ken, being a great head coach and quarterback, he kind of sees the play and says, hey, if we're going to have this, let's make sure we have plan A, B, and C in the back. I'm like, yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ken, you got an Emmy nomination last year for stunt coordination, didn't you?
We did. Me and Don both. I know my name was only on there, but I wouldn't have gotten it without Don.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I want. I mean, it's a little technicality of like, unless your name's on it, it's like, but there's so many. I mean, even with the doubles that we had and the stunt team that we had, I mean, it's, again, it says my name on it, but it's everyone's. It's even Ralph's and Billy's and, Tanner's and Sholo's. It's everybody's.
So and that sort of happens at the Emmys too with the writing categories, where a writer will get nominated, but there's a whole writing room that was contributing to that episode coming together.
So many. Correct.
Yeah. So it is a bit of an eccentricity of the Emmys, how that works.
Okay.
But yeah, what did that nomination mean to you and your team?
I mean, it was fantastic. It wasn't anything that was, I would say, shocking to me or Don or the team, because we kind of knew what we did. And, a lot of times I try to remind people in the world of, CGI world with Marvel and, Disney Plus and this, that, and the other, and no offense to those shows, but we don't do that. Everything that we do is practical. And, it's a lot of hard work, dedication, and a lot of training, to whereas in some of these shows, they can just fix it in post. Our post is fixing it right now and making sure that what can go on film actually goes on film.
Actually, maybe like when I was talking about that 80s retro style that I seem to pick up when watching it is from that. Like, because there is an authenticity to non-CGI fight scenes that, like, again, Marvel, all that old stuff is fantastic, those scenes.
Great, yeah.
But there is some something really real about seeing fights without that happening.
Of course, yes. And it's like what Don was saying, that it's traditional martial arts that you're seeing. We're not going to throw like a 5-4 unless we have to, right? Unless it's for the script. Like, in season 4, Don threw in a flying triangle choke in the All Valley tournament. That's just us keeping up with the times, but it's still traditional to MMA, which is, if we're talking in our time now. But then when you go back to the traditional martial artists and the styles, Don has stayed like true to the 80s, to what it was. And that's the beauty of it. And that's what you're seeing.
Oh, that's awesome. Don, what is a favorite moment of yours from the series that you worked on?
That's hard.
Like that you worked on,
yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I mean, honestly, there's so many great moments, man, with so many different people. I wanted to kind of, if you didn't mind, kind of touch back, with the work that the nomination that we received for the show is that it is, man. A lot of people don't understand how much attention to detail. There's not just a punch for a punch. Everything is story driven, and so there's a why behind everything. And I always make sure we're with the team. Ken's with the team. We want to make sure we understand why we're doing it. It's not just so much that we're doing it. And so there's a lot of meaning behind it. And what a lot of people feel like, what's the difference between those fight sequences versus other fight sequences in the show is that we really do try to be like, why would that person do this? Why would that person do this? Why would that person react here? And really dive into the story with that. The other thing is that we have 14 series cast regulars that have anywhere from a minimum of 1 to 5 fights an episode. And we literally have 10 days to come up with the choreography, choreograph it, pre-visit, and then send it in. And we all know it's going to change on the day. And that to me is rewarding to feel, to be with Ken, to be by his side, and for the team to get a nomination like that, because everybody works extremely hard for that. And like Ken said, it is practical. There's nothing to say, well, this partial part will be VFX, or this partial part's going to be this. And so our part is only not minimizing what the other teams do in those shows, but if anything, it's just highlighting how much we have to do for our show.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very well put. Yes. Correct.
I love that.
But yeah, favorite moments in the show. I mean, I can say from the very get-go, starting on, I have to say one of my favorite parts of the show is actually just being the chance to meet Ken. In the beginning, Ken was a blind hire because I didn't, I was a fan of the show. I really wanted to work on the show. I thought one day it was interesting because I was going to end up working on a show. The show wrapped out because of COVID during the time. And then so I was like, I've never drove across country from Atlanta to LA, so I'm going to do it this time. By the time I got to LA, Ken had called me for an interview for a job for a karate show. And then I met with him and the big three, and then that's when those guys brought me in. And I have so many great memories from that. But that, to me, I think always being nostalgic, not knowing what that was for, and then finally having the opportunity to work on there was a dream come true. I mean, at the same time, working with like Ralph Macchio, he's one of the Karate Kid's the main reason why I got into martial arts. So to me, that's a very touching moment. How as a kid to grow up on something that you joined a sport because of this movie, and now you're going to be working on Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
That to me is like, it's unreal and it's surreal. And, I thank you, Ken, for, always doing that and bringing me in and allowing me to collaborate. Because the other thing too, is a lot of times you can work with a coordinator and they're not so giving as Ken is. And into collaborating, they kind of, stronghold you as a fight coordinator. They don't give you the opportunity to go ahead and have your 2 cents. And Ken's very not that person.
Well, I think that's it. Like, we started with Ken talking about how important it was picking the right team. Don, you've ended with talking about how being part of that team and meeting Ken was a favorite moment of yours. So I think that's a nice little loop to close up on. Thank you so much both for talking to us at Gold Derby about Cobra Kai. All the best of luck for the Emmys this year. And people watching this can go to goldderby.com to follow our awards coverage. Thanks for the time, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks,
cheers, man. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye.